Hello everyone, my name is Luke O'Sullivan and I'm the PPE rep for the Political Science Department, and along with Loy, one of the people who helped get this off the ground several years ago. So I look forward to being able to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Prof. Loy. I was actually giving the other QA together with Joan Tay of PAP this morning for career preparation and experiential learning. I'm from philosophy department, and together with Prof. Luke O'Sullivan and Prof. Chieh Chun, we are the people who, we are in charge of the PPE program in NUS FASS. So happy to take your questions. So there is a QR code for the POLEF. This is the same as the one that Nisa posted just now. So please feel free to use it and ask us questions. We do have a few questions that came in online, so we're going to answer them first. But if we have new questions, we definitely will go to them as well. Yeah, Luke, you want to say anything first before we go on? Prof. Chieh unfortunately can't join us today. She's on our econs counterpart, but she's stuck in a big and important meeting, and she texted me to say that, sorry guys, I just can't join us today. Yeah.
No, please go ahead, Loy, go on.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no further things, we're going to just start with the questions that were sent in, right? So the first one is a perennial one. Nisa, are you going to do this, or do you want us to do it ourselves? Or what?
I'm happy to work with you, no issues.
Yeah, okay, so the first one that came in was, is the perennial contrast with Yale NUS. I'm sure Luke and I can. Luke actually, Prof. Luke actually teaches in Yale NUS sometimes, right? As I remember it.
I have taught that, yes, I've seen both sides.
And most of us actually have good friends in Yale NUS as well. Most of the philosophy people, the econs people, and pol science people, we actually all know each other, right? So they are not unfamiliar to us. We know their program. Okay, let me just start by saying that any kind of contrast between the two places, you probably don't want to think in terms of the PPE program over there versus the PPE program over here. You're really talking about two very different academic systems. One is the liberal arts college with a huge common core, and the major is a lot thinner compared to a research university like us, like FASS, NUS, where the major is comparatively substantial, right? But it doesn't mean that therefore we are better, they are worse. Oh no, it doesn't quite work this way. These are really very different university experiences, right? Now, as far as the PPE program is concerned, because of those larger differences, yes, our program is a bit bigger, thicker. There are more things that we need you to do. We expect you to do. We tell you that you have to do these modules. We're a bit more prescriptive that way. We want all our students, all our PP students to have that foundational philosophical methods training, that kind of foundational politics and Singapore policy and governance, and a foundational microecons and math and all that. So those things are baseline for us, right? So intellectually, I actually believe that we have a very strong package, okay? Career preparation, again, if you have been in this morning's talk, and if you weren't, please go and watch this morning's recording. There's a division of labor between the major and career preparation in FASS. The major is structured to deliver that kind of intellectual engagement to make sure that you are well trained here, right, in the mind, right? So we want you to be thinkers, okay? We're going to give you that kind of intellectual training, right? Now, as far as career preparation is concerned, that's why we have all these other career preparation programs that are built around, right, the rest of your time, the rest of your curriculum, and in fact, just the sheer amount of opportunities that you have available as regular students in FASS. PPE is no different here. It's no different here. Okay, so make sure that you make use of all the career preparation programs that are available in NUS FASS. My advice will not be different compared to any advice I'll give to a sociology student or history student. Likewise, the PPE student. Now, I do want to say one thing though. Many of the current PPE students are very enterprising when it comes to these sort of things. They are looking for internships themselves. So make sure that if you do become a PPE student, connect with the current majors and make sure you network with them, because they are able to get a lot of opportunities, right? Because they're very active, right? They are always on lookout. And whenever we have opportunities, we send along to them as well. Luke, you want to say anything about that? Yeah.
Well, if you do come and do PP with us, we can guarantee you'll be surrounded by a sort of excellent cohort. This is kind of leading into the next point of how hard it is to get in, I think, somewhat. But we've been very impressed with the two cohorts that we've admitted so far, and based on the experience that we've just had with orientation, but ones coming in also look great. I would like to maybe reinforce the point about the division of labour between career prep and academic education, because I think that's very important. I mean, obviously we want you to be able to get a good job afterwards. All the evidence is that you will. But, you know, mostly in FASS, we're not dealing with vocational and professional programs. Some exceptions like social work, of course, but on the whole, we're interested, as Prof. Loy rightly says, in your academic education, not in sort of directly training you to do this, that, or the other. So we have plenty of other facilities for that. We can help you with your CV. We can give you interview practice. We can do all this and more in FASS as well.
Yeah, and of course, your pros from the three, program from the three departments, econs, for instance, we have many contacts, right? And some of us have contacts in ministries and in schools and in private sector. So, but we are not going to just introduce you unless we actually feel like you are going to add value to those people, and those guys are not going to take you unless you impress them either, right? So beyond a certain point, there's only so much that we can do. You have to sort of step up and grasp the opportunities, and go for them. Okay, so I'm sure Luke and I can say a lot more about the difference between a liberal arts college like you, NUS, and us, but maybe we can move along first, right? So the short answer is, I think that and the NUS version of the PP program is quite a bit more substantial and prescriptive, but it's not because somehow it's our PP program versus theirs. It's rather the two college structures are quite different in nature. Okay, the students are also different, right? I don't know, Luke, you taught there before. You should know their students and also.
They're very, very academically strong. Again, if you go to Yale and US, you'll be surrounded by very bright people. But I think the point you're making about it's a different sort of experience. You know, it's a residential college. It's very intense and intensive. You do get the benefit of small classes, but at the same time, it's a broader approach, less specialized in the discipline. And of course, we're a campus university, so in absolute terms, we've got more going on. And not everybody wants that intensive living experience that you get from liberal arts. So it will suit different people. You know, I don't want to say again, I think you're right, who's better or worse. We don't want to really go down that road. They're a very strong program and I wouldn't say anything against them, but I do fully stand by the quality of what we're offering. I think if you come and do PP with us, you won't be disappointed in what you get, or where you end up. So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and as Prof. Luke just mentioned, how hard is it to get into PPE? Actually, that has some implications of the kinds of peers you're going to have in the program, right? So that does make a huge difference, right? So how hard is it to get into the program? Now, you are supposed to have watched the pre-recorded video and you know that our website exists. So I'm not going to go into all the details. So there are two ways to get into the program. One way is to come in via what we call direct entry. And in order to do that, you need to apply at the point of admission to NUS, FASS, and also, send in an application essay to us, right? And we have like hundreds of applications every year so far for the last 3 rounds already. We read so many of these essays, Luke, right? Several weekends that were burned between the 3 of us and so on and so forth. So your competitors are strong. So if you're coming in direct entry, you have very strong competitors. Most people have really, really top-notch A-level and IB scores. Right? So that's one way. Second way is just as important to us. In fact, there's a sense in which, the second way is closer to home, so to speak, right? So this is, you're already in FASS. You did not come in through direct entry to PPE. You are already an FASS student. You can enter the PPE program after your second semester of study in FASS by meeting a certain set of requirements. Basically, you need to get at least a kind of an A- average, right, across the 3 exposure modules of philosophy, political science, and economics. The 3 exposure modules, A- average, with nothing less than a B+, and score at least 4.0 cumulative average score for the. Right? So there you have it. So those are the requirements. Now, they are not low requirements. I'm going to be honest about it. They are kind of tough requirements, but we are matching what we are asking for at the direct entry too, right? Because the direct entry people are coming in with straight A's from the A level. Basically, they are like perfect scorers. So that's what we're looking at. So what's the equivalent of that after your first? Why are there 2 routes? Because we do believe that some people only find themselves when they come to university, right? I was a bit like that too when I was a student many years ago. I think I only really found what I really want to do when I come to the university, when I came to FASS, right? Then I discovered that I'm not only interested in something, I'm really good at it. So we want to make sure we catch that student too, right? And that was one of the reasons why we designed the program this way. And anything to add, Luke? I think that's pretty much it, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, both ways are demanding. I think you're right.
Yeah.
In a sense, I'm not sure there's a lot of difference. Like if you're thinking that one is easier than the other, then probably not. No, I mean, it's tough to get in directly. You've got to do very well at A level. It's quite tough to get in when you're here as well. You've got to do very well in your modules. So much of a muchness, I think.
Yeah, but people do try. And for the last 2 years already, and I because I teach a philosophy exposure module in Sem 1, I will keep running into students who tell me straight up, "Oh, Floyd, I'm targeting the PPE program." I say, "Good, study hard. We'll see you around." Right? And many of them, in fact, do make it into the program. Okay. What's the difference between the direct entry FASS and direct entry into PPE cohorts in terms of workload? Essentially, none. Okay. So, however way you come in, you're meeting essentially the same requirements with one small exception. The direct entry people have one module waived. The writing module is waived for them. Now you know why we ask for application essay for the direct entry people. We want to be reasonably assured that they can write already. Okay, so we don't have to put them through the writing module. That's the only difference. But minus that, the curriculum looks exactly the same. They're going to do the same modules even in the same sequence, in fact. Okay, so there you have it. Okay. Let me see. What's the difference between PPE and doing one major and two minors in the 3 subjects? Right. This is so I keep running into this question. So there's a sense in which it's kind of like a slightly funny question. Because the person who first asked me this question 2 years ago, he was trying to persuade me that wouldn't I, if I do one major plus 2 minors in the 3 disciplines, wouldn't I be even more of a PPE person than your so-called PPE major? And the answer, of course, is there is a sense in which, of course, you're right? But you just notice what you have done. You have burned up all of your unrestricted elective space. All right. If I give you a sheet of paper and you manage to write a story that covers the entire page, you wrote many more things compared to the guy who wrote half a page. So of course he wrote less than you, right? But he has the other half of the page blank. He can fill in with other things. Okay. So when we created the PP major, we have deliberately curated the modules that must go into it. It is not a random selection of modules from the 3 majors, right? We deliberately made it such that there is a core such that they kind of interact with each other. You're learning something that allows you to, arbitrage between the three different disciplines to get a little bit of inspiration from each other, right? So first and foremost, if you're doing it yourself, you're doing self-service, you don't get a curation, okay? And secondly, you have used up all your UE space. But we have done the curation, we have squeezed the whole thing into one package that's no bigger than a major. Okay, you still have your UE space. You can do a second major, you can do minors, you can do other things. Okay, so that is actually the difference, okay?
So can I maybe just add on and perhaps again sort of reinforce that point that if you did a major and 2 minors, in a lot of ways you would be covering the same content, but you wouldn't be getting the same kind of synthetic perspective that we're looking in PPE to try and show you how these disciplines interact with one another in a way that, without hopefully getting too technical, is both kind of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. And that's what would be missing essentially if you or at least that's what you would have to do for yourself if you took these courses and wanted to kind of have a DIY PPE experience. Whereas we have tried to allow for how these things fit together, interact, and even created PPE coded modules at higher levels that you can take where you actually bring these things together. So you would actually be having a rather different experience if you just did a major and 2 minors, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And this is actually a side question that is not literally asked, but I think the two of us should really address it. I think sometimes students will ask me something like, how do you sort of explain whether I should go one way or the other? Should I do a major in, say, pol science with a minor in something else, or global studies, as opposed to doing PPE? No, don't, unless you are direct entry already, in which case you are already PPE students, but even then you can change your mind, right? So if you are regular FASS students and you haven't decided yet, don't decide until you have seen how these things work, right? There's no special reason why you must decide right now. Do the exposure modules first and decide for yourself what is it you really want, right? Now, these are not the same packages. Global Studies offers a certain kind of multidisciplinary package. It's a nice package, right? But it's not the same way of doing multidisciplinary compared to PPE. PPE offers another perspective of how to bring these things together, right? And it's much more disciplinary focused compared to the Global Studies one. There is no sort of area requirement. So these are different ways of doing things, and they're all good ways of doing things, right? And you have to find the one that suits you. What is it that about the world that you're more interested in and you want to gun for that? And likewise, if your choice is between political science or fundamental economics or philosophy and PPE, again, you have to ask yourself, are you the kind of person who is a little bit more interested in kind of like the general policy questions, in which case PPE becomes a little bit more understandable? I cannot guarantee it, but at least it makes a bit more sense. Or are you the kind of person who wants to do metaphysics and epistemology, or you want to crunch that really hard political science data? What is it? So you have to sort of figure out what is it that makes you tick, right? And then you go for that, right? Don't just look at the package and think that everyone is running there and therefore you want to do it. You have to ask yourself, what is it that you are actually interested in, right? So I hope that's not actually the question that is asked, but I think that's an important thing that I hope that everyone is understanding as well. Is PPE compatible with the Utah programs and USP and Trotting Pole? Yes, the answer is just yes. Yeah. we have several USP students in the PPE cohort, and you know if you are there, you can just ask them for help. And then all these programs, can you see now again why I say that it's important to understand that PPE as a major is no bigger than any other regular major. I think +1 module, that's about it. So your UE space is preserved for you to park other things as well, okay? Overseas opportunities, no, you're not excluded from international opportunities. The simple answer is whenever you go to, you go on an exchange, right? And you bring back a module for mapping, what you're essentially doing is you're asking one of the departments on our side to recognize that module as mapping onto a certain modular code, okay? So you can always go on exchange and bring back modules that are mapped onto things in the unrestricted elective space. There's always that. If you want to map it onto modules in the PPE curriculum, then all you need to do is to basically go to the philosophy department or the pol science department or the econs department and bring us the paperwork, show us that I would like to map this particular exchange module onto this item, which is run by your department, political science or econs or philosophy, and I would like to map that module. So it's, in a sense, no different from any other major, actually. Okay. So ironically, you can even think of it as you have access to the opportunities that are kind of available to people from all three majors, in a sense, right? But though, of course, you probably won't make use of all of that opportunity because your interest is not the same, right? Luke, you have any? I don't know whether you have anything to say about this. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think we're hoping to add more international opportunities, if anything, in future, but perhaps I shouldn't say anything too much about that because I don't want to give any hostages to fortune. Because perhaps one thing I would say that students are probably not aware of is how difficult it is to coordinate with other universities when it comes to sorting out international exchanges and so on. It's really a lot of work behind the scenes that the student generally never sees, which is fine, of course. There's no reason the student should be concerned, but we have to do an awful lot to make sure people are looked after, not just academically, but in welfare terms as well when they go overseas or when people come to us. And it's a lot of work and responsibility for the institutions. So we'd like to actually do more here, but it's going to take a while, probably.
In any case, this is really a bad year to talk about any exchange.
Yeah, also, unfortunately, it's probably the worst time. I mean, we hope if you're coming in now that towards the end of your degree, we'll be back to something more like a normal world. But
not so bad, Luke. Let's hope that by next calendar year, okay?
Yeah, I'll give you fingers crossed. Yeah.
But yes, do look into international opportunities, overseas opportunities. By the way, overseas exchange, student exchange programs are not the only possible international programs. I have some of our PPE students are doing internships. There's one that did an internship with a European, in the European getup actually. So be enterprising, look for overseas internships, chances to work with NGOs, and there's so many things you can do. Don't just get fixated on the particular thing that everyone is talking about, student exchange program. Those are just only some of the, just a few of the possibilities as well. Okay, Nisa, I heard that I think there's supposed to be some questions coming in from Polef.
If you don't mind, our colleague will put the Polef live on screen. So maybe to save some time, I'll start with the first question. I feel that PPE programs conducted in other universities, example Oxbridge, nurture students for a career centered around politics. What has the experience of NUS PPE graduates been in securing jobs in other sectors?
Okay, so PPE only existed in NUS for around 2 years. This is only the third batch. So we have no career, whatever, data to fall back on. Let's just be clear about that. We only created this program like, a couple of years ago. But looking at the current two cohorts, I'll be very surprised if they are not well positioned for both the private and public sector. So that's point number one. Okay, we know who these students are. They're extremely active in the internship sphere. And some of them are already getting, research placements in MTI and all that. So that's point number one. Point number two, when we designed this PPE program, we deliberately did not target Oxford. Okay, Oxford is a particular kind of PPE program. We actually targeted other programs around the world. I can actually talk for probably several hours about the differences, but I don't really want to do that. I believe that our program is quite a bit more integrated, right, in terms of the intellectual stuff. Okay, the PP program in Oxford is a lot more laissez-faire. You actually just basically go in with the 3 majors, and you by the end of the second year, apparently you can even drop one of the 3. So it's a very different kind of thing. And secondly, this is something you need to learn when you're dealing with data. You should ask yourself how much of this is selection effect, how much of it is human capital, right? Do the students coming out from the Oxbridge programs enter politics because of the Oxbridge program, or were they in that program because that's the kind of people they are dealing with? So you should ask yourself that kind of question, and that's what I hope we are teaching you as well in dealing with data. Okay, let's do another question. Yeah.
If I specialize in political science or PPE, can my second major be economics?
Yes, the answer is yes. Let's move on. Yeah.
If I take 40 MCs in the first year and SU more than 12 mods, how will the cap of 28 mods be calculated? Will the department look at the initial grade despite a grade B?
The answer is okay, kind of a yes and no. If you don't have 28 MCs of actual graded modules and you want to apply, then technically there's an appeal. And when you appeal, we will review the grades and look at them. Okay. So the one part of the answer is yes, we will consider the review grades, but you will need to go through the extra process of telling us that you want us to do that.
Okay. Next question. What's the workload like? Must be heavy. Seems intensive.
Luke, do you feel like our students are being worked very hard?
Yes, but not to the point where they don't have lives outside of that. I mean, no degree program should be so intensive that it doesn't leave you space for your own interests. At the same time, we expect you to put some effort in here. So there's a balance between having an intellectually rewarding experience and enjoying all the other things you can do at university. And I mean, I think in FASS we generally get that right. And this kind of also feeds, if I can take the next question, I'm not sure the other majors in FASS are meant for any average kid either. It's not easy to get into FASS, full stop. We actually have reasonably high requirements across the faculty. We're one of the harder faculties, I think, actually to get into these days. So I don't think of very many of our students are just like average kids. They're not. They're all strong kids. The PPE kids are maybe just even stronger than that, But we don't want to work you so hard that you don't enjoy yourself at the same time. I mean, we do have, unfortunately, a small minority of our students who sometimes do take their studies a little bit too seriously. And we would actually like them to lighten up a little bit and remember, university is meant to be a kind of all-round experience where you come in, you study hard, but you also have a lot of fun, make some good friends, and so on as well. I think that's also very important, and we're cognizant of that.
Yeah, so why the entry requirements? I can say something about that. We set entry requirements because we want to make sure that you can handle the interdisciplinary arbitrage. So that's the part that is a little bit tricky, right? Because we don't have the luxury of taking you through one discipline through, 3 years, right? We kind of count upon you to be able to context switch between 3 different disciplines as part of the very nature of the program. So we just want to make sure that you are okay with that, right? Because the end product, is the part of the quality of the end product is going to depend on whether you can do that kind of stuff. Hence the A- average requirement for the 3 exposure modules. Remember, it's only A-. We're not even asking for A's or A+. Okay, so many people actually can meet this requirement. The fact that they are not applying is only telling me that they're not as interested. That's the only reason. Okay. What's the difference between PPE and global studies? I think that actually, I kind of touched on that a little bit. I think that both are very good programs. They offer slightly different ways to do the multidisciplinary thing. In fact, some of the colleagues who are teaching in global studies are people who are kind of PPE-like people. I was just talking to, Luke, in fact, we're just talking to someone. And Luke is actually from the same department, right? So don't think of us as straightforward, competitors, but there is a difference in the way we think about how we do the multidisciplinary thing. They are a little bit more world-focused than us. They have a region requirement. We don't have a region requirement, right? We are much more on we want to understand these intellectual tools and be able to use them. But then I'm talking in generalities. It's a bit hard to do this without you actually taking the modules yourself, actually. You want to quickly add to that? Yeah.
Yes, I was involved with global studies for quite a while, and it is a good program, but perhaps you could say that they have a specific kind of thematic orientation. You're studying globalization in its various manifestations. So you can take a historical approach to globalization, you can study globalization economically, you can look at globalization from a cultural point of view, but that was at least the original concept behind the major, whereas we're not really quite so focused on content. We're more about trying to get you to think from different standpoints and integrate those standpoints with one another. So, I mean, we do mandate some content, like in the PS part, we want you to study some Singapore politics. But in general, it's about mastering the interaction of the different intellectual perspectives rather than coming to grips with a particular phenomenon.
Yeah. But in any case, again, I want to emphasize, both are good programs. So, so you got to find what is it you're interested in, don't,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, you won't be unhappy if you go for global studies. Maybe also, I mean, an area where they do overlap actually is kind of in the policy arena, that, one area where they're similar is global studies has a kind of built-in policy emphasis, but actually perhaps more than PPE does. Yeah. Global studies is certainly in the capstone in the fourth year. Global studies is very hands-on, working with an industry person to do a capstone. So, that's maybe an area where they're perhaps a little bit more practice-based than we are. We're a little bit more theory-oriented than global studies.
Yeah. Okay, the last one, mapping of modules. So first and foremost, no matter what major you are, you come back with whatever modules you have, you still have to go to the relevant department to get them mapped. So you could be an econ student who went to Berkeley for exchange and came back with a bunch of philosophy modules. And guess what? You still have to approach the philosophy department to get them mapped. So there's no difference here, okay? Right? So whichever department is owning the module that we want to map to, no matter what major you are, you still have to come back, approach the department and get it mapped. Now, it is true that in a sense, as a PP student, in general already, there are 3 places that you need to get them mapped, but that's just because, okay, these are the people who own those modules. Now, actually, I'm working towards a central office where you just have to deal with one admin person, right? So ideally, that can happen. By the way, our people are all very friendly. Suppose you are an econ specialization PPE person and you went to talk to the econs admin staff and say that I have this module that I would like to get it mapped onto the PS module. You think she's not going to help you? She's going to help you. She's going to connect you with a pol science admin person, and they'll figure something out for you. So that's not something that you need to worry about. Yeah, that's like, probably you want to spend time, brain power, worrying about, which modules to take, how do I maximize your time. Worrying about admin processes is not a good use of your time, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Loy, Prof. O'Sullivan. Thanks for sparing your time on this afternoon. On behalf of the freshmen, thank you so much for introducing them to PPE. So we are going to now move on to the next session. Before that, any last words, Prof. Loy, Prof. O'Sullivan, for freshmen out there?
Leo, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing some of you in the classroom as soon as possible, really.
Yeah, whether it's on Zoom or otherwise. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, all the best. You are already here in NUS, so enjoy your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, freshmen, for those of you who are with the PPE session, a quick rain check housekeeping announcement. If you have questions regarding the curricula, please feel free to reach out to the FASS Dean's office. The phone number is on your screen, or you can email fasshelp@nus.edu.sg.